We have shocking new information about Robert Redford. The famous actor hasn't been seen or heard from since early 2024. There are rumors that he's having serious health problems, but his publicist hasn't said anything about this. If these rumors are true, his fans should be worried because Redford has lived to be 88 years old. Fans still can't get enough of Robert Redford. What's going on with him? Should fans be worried? Here's what we know. Charles Robert R. Redford was born in Santa Monica, California, on August 18, 1936. His parents were Martha Woodruff Redford and Charles Robert Redford. His father was a milkman who also worked as an oil company accountant, and his mother loved music. His family tree is interesting. His paternal half-brother William looks a lot like him. His paternal great-grandfather was an English Protestant named Elisha Redford. He married an Irish Catholic woman named Maryanne McCrae, and they moved to New York in 1849 and settled in Stonington, Connecticut. They had a son named Charles, who was the first in the family to have a child. The maternal lineage of Redford is also interesting. The Harts were from Galway, and the Greens were Scots-Irish who came to the U.S. in the 18th century. Redford's family lived in Vanish, and his father worked in El Segundo. Robert Redford was a nuisance in his Vanish neighborhood, and he spent most of his childhood getting into fights with a street gang in his hometown. He often took part in dangerous dares, and one time he almost died when he was challenged to jump off a tall building by his gang to show how strong and loyal he was. The boy wasn't afraid to try another challenge because he wanted to prove his manliness for good. He jumped and didn't break any bones, but he was one step away from slipping and hurting his spine. He continued to cause trouble in the neighborhood by stealing things and drinking too much. He was having the time of his life, and only changed after he was arrested for jewelry theft. Robert Redford went to Van, New York's high school and met baseball pitcher Don Dale. They were friends, but not best friends. Dale remembered that Robert never said he wanted to be an actor because he was so good at sports. Dale was a tennis player, baseball player, and football player. He thought he would become one of the best footballers or baseball players of all time, but fate had other plans. Robert wasn't a good student, as you might expect. In fact, he was a bad student who thought he shouldn't be in school. While his classmates were inspired by inventors and great people, he found inspiration in art and sports. He was a huge tennis fan. After high school in 1954, he went to the University of Colorado on a baseball scholarship and was a member of the Kappa Sigma fraternity. While he was there, he worked well with his coworkers at a restaurant and bar called The Sink. While he was in Colorado, he started drinking heavily. He would go to his room and drink himself into a store without eating anything to lessen the effects of the alcohol. He stared at the ceiling for hours while having strange thoughts until he started hallucinating. He was kicked out of school. When the confused teen couldn't keep up, he went to Europe and lived in France, Spain, and Italy. It was the worst time of his life, and he thought he was a failure. He worked as a box boy at a supermarket, but was fired. And then his dad got him a job at Standard Oil, but he was fired again. Robert also got in trouble with the law a few times for sneaking into people's homes to use their pools, but traveling to Europe helped him learn about art, culture, and world affairs. Meeting students in Paris changed the way he saw life. He loved the challenge of living with others, having deep conversations, and everything else about France. It was so intense that he felt bad about not knowing much about American politics. He vowed to do better when he got back to the U.S. a year and a half later to be more focused on serious issues. Robert studied painting at the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. Later, he switched to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City to study acting. When he got back to America that year, he met his sweetheart Lola Van Wagen in Los Angeles. They got married in 1958 in a small ceremony at Lola's grandmother's house. A year after they got married, their 5-month-old son Scott died of sudden infant death syndrome. The loss broke Redford, and he blamed himself for not checking on his baby sooner. He was young and had just started a job that didn't pay much. He thought he could use the money to take care of his new family. His last emotional breakdown happened when his mother died of septicemia in 1955. He wasn't taught how to talk about his feelings, so he turned to acting to get over the loss. This decision changed his life forever. He made his Broadway debut in the comedy Tall Story, followed by The Highest Tree later that same year. By 1960, he was better known in the business, starting in Little Moon of Alban with Julie Harris and co-starring in Another Funny Movie with Conrad Janis. Before his big break, Redford worked on a lot of other movies. In 1963, he got the lead role in Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park. In that movie, he played Paul B.R.D., a newlywed lawyer who moves into a house in Greenwich Village with his wife Corey. Moving on, he gave the producers a run for their money in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where he played the outlaw, also known as. Paul Newman played Butch Cassidy and Robert Redford played the Sundance Kid. Both characters were fun to watch, and they also became good friends. The movie was a critical and commercial success, but there was one small problem. Redford is a pretty man who doesn't want to be cast in pretty boy roles all the time. He was worried about the tone of his projects and avoided ones that were more focused on his sex appeal. He did well in the sports drama Downhill Racer and the western Tell Them Why Boys Here, both released in 1969. Another important film for him was The Candidate, a political drama released in 1972. This showed that he could fit into as many challenging roles as possible, and his career took off. He had already slipped deeper into Hollywood and knew what he wanted. In the 1960s, he bought land in Utah and added to it over the years. His love of land led him to become an environmental activist. He even got death threats for speaking out against certain developments in Utah, but he didn't back down. This man believes that art and nature make the world a better place, which is why he takes both roles so seriously. 1973 was a great year for Redford. Because he had two big hits, The Way We Were and The Sting in The Way We Were, he starred opposite Barbara Strand in a drama about the ups and downs of a couple's relationship. In The Sting, he worked with Newman to play con artists in 1930s Chicago. The movie was so popular that it earned him an Academy Award nomination, his first of the decade. He went on to have other successes, such as working with Mia Farrow in The Great Gatsby, and with Faye Dunaway in 3 Days of the Condor. He also appeared in All the President's Men, a morality play in which he and Dustin Hoffman played reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. Many people think that Ordinary People is Robert Redford's most important work. He won an Oscar for this iconic work, which he used to show that he was more than just a movie star. It was his directorial debut, but it didn't feel like one. The drama, which stars Mary Tyler Moore, Timothy Hutton, and Donald Sutherland, shows a family torn apart by grief and loss. Redford won his first Academy Award for Best Director for this work around this time. He set up the Sundance Institute to help and support independent filmmakers in different ways. The Sundance Film Festival then became a place where these works could be seen and promoted. In the 1980s, the award-winning actor chose only a few roles. He starred in the baseball drama The Natural with Robert D. Ball and Glenn Close, and he also tried his hand at romance. Redford directed his second movie, More Beanfield War, which starred Sonia Braga and Ruben Blades. The movie is about a group of local farmers who are fighting against a big development project in their area. This brings us back to his love for the environment, which helped him do a better job. Redford also won praise for his rural family drama A River Runs Through It, which starred Tom Hanks. He explored the corruption of 1950s game shows and quiz shows in Scarlett and Brad Pitt. He got 2 more Oscar nominations for Best Picture and Directing, even though he said he didn't like sexual parts. He made a couple of high-profile roles in sexually charged movies like Indecent Proposal in 1993. Redford is now pickier about the movies he works on. After The Legend of Bagger Vance in the 2000s, he directed and starred in the political drama Lion for Lambs with Tom Cruise and Meryl Streep. But the movie didn't do very well. He wasn't happy with his performance in the movie, but it inspired him to do better. His next movie, The Conspirator, was a success. It's about Mary Surratt's trial. She is the only woman charged with killing President Abraham Lincoln. The next year, he directed and acted in The Company. You Keep stars Shia LaBeouf and Julie Christie as a radical in the 1960s who lived underground until a reporter found him. Redford did well in All Is Lost 2013, where he played a sailor in dangerous situations. After Marvel Comics' Captain America the Winter Soldier 2014, he tried his hand at Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods. This man has won many awards and honors over the years for his imaginative writing and great acting. As an actor, Redford is one of the few who has stood the test of time. In 2001, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences gave him an honorary award for inspiring independent, innovative filmmakers everywhere. In 2016, President Obama gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So what's this shocking new information about Robert Redford? It's a whole. This man has been through a lot in the last few years, and it's amazing how he's come back to become a great actor and director. Let's get to it right away. Redford lost his first son 2 months after birth. Luckily, his wife Lola adopted him 3 years later. But then they were afraid they would lose their second child, and their wife's life was also in danger. David James Redford, Redford's second child, was born prematurely with the same condition that killed John F. Kennedy's second son. Patrick, the baby, was only given a 40% chance of survival, and James was diagnosed with hyena membrane disease. Luckily, the family made it through, and both mother and child were unharmed. The Oscar winner talked about his early years as a family man. He said that people think it's easy for him, but he thinks the hardest thing in the world is when your kids have problems. I agree with him. He also hinted at many other things he wanted to keep private for his family's sake, but not all of these are secrets today. James Redford survived infant death, but he died at age 58 from bile duct cancer in his liver. His sad wife announced this on Twitter earlier. James had liver disease and was treated for it, but the condition returned 2 years later. He was waiting for a liver transplant in November 2020, but died in October of that year. Like his father, James was passionate about the environment. The director also focused on science and education. His 1999 documentary, The Kindness of Strangers, was based on his experience receiving 2 liver transplants from strangers. He dedicated the work to them like any other father. Robert Redford did not take his son's death lightly. It was another heavy blow for him at an old age. He did not say anything about it himself, but his publicist, Cindy Berger, said that the Hollywood star was struggling with the loss and that it was harder for him because his son was. His grief was unbearable, and Cindy said that his legacy lives on through his children's art, films, and desire to protect the environment. She asked that his family be given privacy during this time. Meanwhile, Redford hasn't been himself since James's death. He may have lost his sons, but he's used to grief. In 2018, he paid an emotional tribute to his beloved mother, Martha Redford, who died of a hemorrhage at the age of 40. related to a blood disorder she got during the stillbirth of her twin daughters. The Hollywood star said that his mother's death changed his life. She had been his rock since he was born, and she was right. Unfortunately, she didn't live to see her faith pay off. Her son made his acting debut 5 years after her death. Robert sang his mother's praises at the event. He praised her adventurous spirit, smile, and positive attitude even in bad situations. His grief doesn't end here. He lost his uncle who raised him as his father. Milkman job. The actor didn't get as much attention from his real dad, Charles Redford, but he became close with his Uncle David. Uncle David was friendly and playful, like a father, and he was a football player who spoke many languages. He took young Robert to practice different football techniques. This relationship only lasted a few years because Uncle David joined the army to serve in World War II and tragically never came home. He died in a car accident while traveling across a Luxembourg bridge. His family moved on after hearing the terrible news, but they didn't have a choice. Redford has also been in. Through a wild love life, he had to end his marriage to his longtime partner because of disagreements. The divorce was hard on him as well. Let's look at this part of his life. In the mid-1980s, Robert and Lola had one of the most stable marriages in Hollywood. Many people admired it, but underneath it all, it was very unstable. Robert met Lola while they were both students at the University of Colorado, and they fell in love right away. Lola studied history and environmental activism while Redford studied acting in theater and painting. Their shared love of art and the environment made them fall in love right away. They got married in 1958, but a few years later, everything changed because of Redford's fame. He got more roles and had to spend more time away from his family because of the work and attention. While he was gone, Lola was lonely and sad. With 4 kids to raise, the couple had a hard time balancing their lives. Things went wrong in the 1970s when a change in Lola's cultural values and expectations made her more and more unhappy with the arrangement. We've heard that cheating may have played a part in their divorce, but the news is still sketchy. Redford. There were rumors of cheating on both sides, but Lola hasn't said anything about it. It's important to be careful when talking about this subject, since Redford has never publicly admitted to cheating on Van Wagen, and the couple has always kept their personal life private. This is because of the pressures of fame and the changes that come with it. Being married in public can put stress on a relationship, which is why Redford divorced Lola in 1985, after almost 30 years of marriage. Their reasons were simple. They said they grew apart over time, going in different directions and not being able to find a way to meet halfway. Their priorities also changed, which made it hard to stay together as a couple. After their divorce, Robert Redford and Lola Van Wagen went after their own individual interests and careers. Redford became a successful Hollywood all-around actor, while Lola became a well-known environmental activist and educator. Lola is still committed to women's rights and sustainability. The two are still friends, but Redford married Sybil Zagers in 2009. In 2015, a tweet called "Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid actor dies" started rumors that the 79-year-old actor had died after falling off a golf buggy in Santa Monica, California. The fake news quickly went viral, and tributes began to pour in. Thankfully, his publicist called the rumor a hoax, and Cindy Berger confirmed that the actor was still alive. Redford has also been said to have skin cancer, which is not true. In the scene where he showed off his body in Good Will Hunting, fans thought he had skin cancer because he had many moles on his neck and back, but they've been there since he was a child. Not much has been heard about him in 2024. He's slowly pulling away from the public because of concerns about his age. The Academy Award winner retired from acting in 2018. He told CBS News that his role in The Old Man and the Gun was his last movie, and he said that he was retiring because he was getting old and because he had been acting since he was 21 years old, so he needed a break. However, a month later, he said that his retirement from acting wasn't final. He said that the announcement was a mistake, and he should have kept quiet about it. Surprisingly, he returned to an existing role a year later, and he also voiced the comedy film Omnibus, a fastboat Fantasia. This suggests that he's not leaving anytime soon, and he'll probably retire when his health gives out completely. For now, Robert Redford is healthy, aside from a bout of polio as a child.